Hello and welcome to BMB's Primetime Fantasy Report for Week 8 in the NFL, where we have all the scores and news from this week. Starting off this week was Thursday night's football game, which saw the Atlanta Falcons claim their second victory of the season against the Carolina Panthers. Guys like Matt Ryan and Todd Gurley really stepped up and proved why their season may have some hope.
Similar to the Falcons, the Vikings also got their second win against division rivals in the Green Bay Packers. Player of the game, without question, goes to Dalvin Cook, who scored 4 touchdowns and ran for 163 yards. He was a big help to anyone who had him on their fantasy team, like myself, but we'll get to that a bit later.
In an upset victory, the Cincinnati Bengals defeated the Tennessee Titans 31-20. Rookie quarterback Joe Burrow threw 2 touchdown passes and passed for 249 yards. Burrow seems to be definitely finding his footing in Cincinnati.
I think to no one's surprise, we all know what I'm about to say now. The Jets lost to the defending Super Bowl champions in an absolute blowout. Did anyone expect this to be close or an actual football game? Player of the game goes to Patrick Mahomes, who threw 5 touchdown passes, which is more touchdown passes than the Jets have this season. Mahomes found guys like Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, McCole Hardman, and Demarcus Robinson in the end zone multiple times. Over the past 8 weeks, I've realized our best player is our kicker, Sam Ficken. And when your best player in the team is a kicker, I'm in a loss of words.
That game may have been very one-sided, but the game against the Steelers and the Ravens was not. Steelers extended their record to 7-0 against Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. The game came down to the last pass, which was batted away from the amazing Steelers defense, who've been stellar all season long. The Steelers have an easy stretch coming up to take on the Cowboys, Bengals, and Jacksonville Jaguars in the upcoming weeks. Will the Steelers keep this undefeated season, or will one of those teams or another break it?
This week, so the Indianapolis Colts defeat the Detroit Lions. The stars of the game were Matt Stafford and Phil Rivers, who threw for 3 touchdowns each. The player of the game, however, is Nyheim Hines, who had 2 touchdowns for the Indianapolis Colts.
Those 2 QBs are vets. The QB on the winning team got his first start, Tua Tagovailoa, who played his first NFL game, and it was against the LA Rams. Imagine having 284-pound Aaron Donald charge you in your first start. Tua had that happen, but he still pulled through and got the win.
The Buffalo Bills improved their record to 6-2 against my New England Patriots in an ugly QB showing. Cam Newton and Josh Allen both got 1 touchdown on the ground, but did not throw a single touchdown pass. It was the rushing game who won the game for the Bills. Zach Moss got the Bills 2 rushing touchdowns in Sunday's victory. But the Patriots came roaring back in the 4th, and Cam decided to fumble the game away. Looks like it's time to tank.
I think the LA Chargers are turning into the new Atlanta Falcons by blowing a huge lead. The Denver Broncos had a 4th quarter miracle on Sunday, where they defeated the Chargers by 1 point. Drew Lock stepped up and took control of that game in the 4th quarter. Justin Herbert still continues to impress, but this week was Lock's week.
In one of the not-so-exciting games this week, the Las Vegas Raiders defeated the Cleveland Browns 16-6. Player of the game goes to Joshua Jacobs, who had 31 carries and 128 rushing yards.
In the 4:25 window, we saw an overtime victory by the New Orleans Saints, who defeated the Chicago Bears. The main takeaway from that game was the fight that occurred. Javon Wims went up to C.J. Gardner-Johnson and straight up punched his helmet twice. Wims stated he was sticking up for teammate Anthony Miller when Johnson stuck his fingers in Miller's helmet. He also claimed Johnson spit on him a couple of plays before. Javon Wims was given a 2-game suspension without pay for these actions.
The 49ers were beat by the 6-1 Seattle Seahawks 37-27. The main takeaway was the injuries from the 49ers team that can't catch or break with these injuries. George Kittle and Jimmy Garoppolo are both expected to miss a number of weeks, which we will be discussing in just a bit. From the Seahawks, guys like Russell Wilson and DK Metcalf never seem to disappoint. Metcalf got 2 touchdowns and ran for 161 yards. It also has been reported that the 49ers have closed their facility following a positive COVID-19 test.
The Battle of NFC East continued this Sunday, where the Eagles defeated the Cowboys 23-9. Player of the game goes to wide receiver Travis Fulgham, who put up a touchdown in Sunday night's win. The start for Ben DiNucci was quite a rocky one, but the Cowboys planned to Ben DiNucci and go to their fourth string quarterback this week. Things aren't looking great in Dallas. And to think some people thought the problem was Coach Jason Garrett, but it doesn't look like that here.
Wrapping up this part of the episode is the Monday night's nail-biter between the Tampa Bay Bucks and the New York Giants. Daniel Jones had another rough turnover game and then needs to be fixed for the rest of the season and for Jones' career. This game came down to a controversial no-call during the Giants' two-point conversion try. Many say Antoine Winfield should have been penalized for pass interference on Dion Lewis, while others, including myself, believe that Jones should have thrown the ball earlier and it should have never been a discussion. Those who believe the latter are calling for Jones' replacement, which is warranted. Jones didn't play well. Leave your thoughts in the comments.
Switching gears, we have your injury report for Week 8. This week saw tight end George Kittle, who is expected to miss 8 weeks with a broken bone in his foot, which means his season could be over. But, as he did state a couple of days ago, he hopes to be back sooner than 8 weeks.
From the same team, Jimmy Garoppolo is expected to be sidelined a minimum of 6 weeks and possibly longer if surgery is needed on his ankle. Another ankle injury occurred in Atlanta with Calvin Ridley, who may be able to play as soon as next week. We hope all these guys can heal up and get back on the field as soon as possible.
Those guys may be off the field for a bit, but these guys have been on fire on the field. It's time to tell you the top 5 fantasy players of the week. Coming in at number 5, it's Russell Wilson, who scored 28.7 fantasy points for your team. Wilson threw 4 touchdown passes and threw for 261 yards. Wilson's name has been also coming up very frequently for this year's MVP race. Who, in my opinion, think may be a candidate for the MVP race?
At number 4 is Davante Adams from the Green Bay Packers, who scored 30.3 fantasy points and scored 3 receiving touchdowns. Adams never disappoints for your fantasy team and continues to put up amazing numbers with quarterback Aaron Rodgers.
At number 3 for the Kansas City Chiefs, it's Patrick Mahomes with 36.64 fantasy points and threw more touchdown passes in this game than the Jets did this season. Mahomes threw for 416 yards and had a 31 out of 42 completion rate.
At the runner-up spot from the Seahawks is DK Metcalf, who put up 40.1 points. Metcalf targeted 12 times and ran for 161 yards and scored 2 touchdowns in Seattle's win against the 49ers.
Coming in at number 1, it's no surprise, it's Dalvin Cook, who put up 48.6 fantasy points. Cook had a phenomenal game where he scored 3 rushing touchdowns, 1 receiving touchdown, and ran for 226 yards. Cook also carried the ball 30 times. A day to remember for Dalvin Cook.
So those guys helped your fantasy teams this past week. But let's see who helps ours. Starting it off with me, I'm 8-0. I'm flying high. I beat Aaron it out 113 to 140. My top players were Dalvin Cook, our number 1 fantasy player of the week, almost dropped a 50 spot, accounting for a good third of my team's total points. We also, on the other sideline, we had Jamal Williams going for 18.2, Justin Jackson going for 17.2, and Julio Jones going for 20.7, and I also left Curtis Samuel on the bench. He dropped 21. A little mistake there. How about you, Finn?
Well, in fantasy this week, I won my fantasy 110.1 to 107.2. My top 4 players this week, in 4th was Sterling Shepard from the New York Giants. He got 15.4 fantasy points. Then in 3rd place, Joe Burrow. He got 18.8 fantasy points. In 2nd place, Travis Fulgham with 19.8 points. And then finally, in 1st place for me, Davante Adams, who basically carried my team this week to get me the victory, 30 fantasy points. Okay, and finally, Sean, how was your week in fantasy?
Well, Finn, I took another rough loss this week, and I'm now realizing that my team is not very good. My top 4 players consisted of Giovanni Bernard from the Cincinnati Bengals, who put up 22.8 fantasy points. DJ Dallas, who stepped in for Chris Carson from the Seattle Seahawks with 22.8 points as well. Cooper Kupp from the LA Rams with 22 points, and Matt Ryan with 17.94 points from the Atlanta Falcons. Tom, what did your week look like?
So yeah, guys, I took the loss this week, 121 to 80. My top performers were Alvin Kamara, Brandon Ayuk, Mike Davis, and Hunter Henry. Kamara's always up in the range of 20 points. Ayuk's going to be a good receiver. If he's on the waiver wire, I suggest picking him up. He's going to be feasting with Deebo Samuel and George Kittle out. I suggest picking him up. Mike Davis, he's going to be their second string now, and Hunter Henry's a boomer bust. So, that'll just about wrap up this week of BMB's Primetime Fantasy Report. I've been Tom Morrow.
I've been Finnegan Corcoran Doolin, and I hope the Giants beat Washington once again.
I've been Matt Manno, and I'm going to be really disappointed if the Pats lose to the Jets. Like, that's impossible. We're not going to lose to the Jets. We can't lose to the Jets.
Yeah, you guys better not lose to us. Anyway, see you next week on the B&B Primetime Fantasy Report.